You recording? Cool. Hey everybody, Stuff I Heard Podcast. Let's do it. Thank you for tuning in. Today happens to be March the 6th, I think, of 2020. And this is episode 197. It's weird that I'm keeping track of this stuff. I don't know why I'm keeping track of this. Do you guys keep track of this? Do you care? Does it matter? Do you even care that I'm doing it? I don't know. So anyway, it's been a slow week. Actually, I just did a podcast 2 days ago. But, you know, the way it goes, you just you either keep trekking forward or you fall behind. And, you know, I've committed myself to doing 2 a week, so I wanted to crank one out. So here we go. I went into an interesting sort of rabbit hole of The Fighter and the Kid. You guys have heard me talk about them before. It's Bryan, Callen, and Brandon Shaub. They have a podcast together. I love their intro. They do this funny skit in the intro. It repeats every show. But it's Bryan trying to introduce, and he keeps going, coming at you live. And the whole time, Bryan's in the background going, no, it's not live. Shut up. It's coming at you live. He goes, dude, it's not live. You can't say that. He goes, shut up. It's a funny thing of them that they, I'm sure, recorded on the fly and then thought, this is hilarious. Let's just use this. Because, I mean, it probably came across as literally them just screwing around. And then once it came out, they were like, oh, this is great. We gotta keep this. So anyway, I've listened to episode 537. It's called Honey Hole Monday. How do I describe Honey Hole in a politically correct, family-friendly way? Okay, so they're watching a video of a motorcycle accident where these two guys are riding motorcycles, and when the motorcycle crashes, let's just say it looks like one guy is reaching for his watch inside another guy because of the way they crashed. So, yeah. It just, I didn't watch the video. I listened to it when I was on the road, and I don't want to watch the video. Just them describing it, I was like, whoa. I did not think this was a honey hole. How did you come up with the word honey hole, and why? Why? Oh, there's so many questions. So questions that I'm not sure I want to know the answer to. So I've seen the trucks on the road that go around and they clean out your septic tank, you know, and they have catchy phrases like the honey wagon. They call it, you know, I don't know why they call it the honey wagon. I guess because maybe bees are attracted. I don't know, whatever. It's not honey. It doesn't smell like honey. It doesn't look like honey. But the honey makes the money, right? So these guys who have this job have a bit of a sense of humor. I've seen advertisements that say, make us your number one for your number twos and stuff like that, you know. Turn your poo into our future or whatever. Just, there's all kinds of little things, but I've seen the word honey described for that. Is that why the honey hole comes across for this particular event? And they keep making reference to it in the show, and it's hilarious because it keeps building, and these guys are screwing around with each other the whole time, and it's hilarious. But then, the episode right after that, number 538, is with another comedian named Chris Distefano. Now, right away when he starts speaking, I'm thinking, I've heard this guy in other podcasts. I know I have. He's probably been on Bertcast. He's probably been on Something's Burning if I had to do like a deep dive look. But the guy's hilarious. And he starts talking a little bit about his past. He makes jokes of the fact that he was molested as a kid by a priest. He has a father with very interesting boundary rules. And he's got stories that come up as he's talking to these guys about whatever. apparently he was a very good basketball player back in college. He went to a D3 school. He was an All-American point guard, like 6 foot. I think he said he's 6'1". But when he went to try out to try and make it to the next level, there was a coach there that he told him, he said, "Son," he said, "you got the skills of a D1 player and the body of a D3 player. That's the problem." So I don't exactly know his body type, but he said he tried to do acting because while he was in college, or after he got out of college, he started working. He actually is a doctor of physical therapy. He worked with kids with special needs, helping them learn to walk and that kind of stuff and function. And he said he really enjoyed it, but he had the opportunity to be on a show called Guy Code. Now, if you guys watched MTV back in the day, you might know what Guy Code is. And they were like, you know, his boss came to him, he's like, "Hey, listen, you can't be treating children and then also talking about the stuff you're talking about on Guy Code." And he said, "At the time I was trying my hand to stand up, and I thought, you know, I'm really enjoying this. Let me just see where this takes me." So he became a stand-up comedian. So right off the bat, he's an athlete, he's a doctor, and he's really funny. He's got funny stories about his past. He's got funny stories about why he became what he is. He's got a disturbing story about his friends who, it sounds like they molested him and physically violated him in different ways. But because of it, like, he decided to make himself a better person. And I don't know if he needs therapy or if he's actually worked through it okay. He sounds like he's okay. He sounds like he's like, "No, I learned from it and I moved on. I decided I want to be better than them." And I was like, whoa, it's a rough one to hear. But he makes fun of it the whole way. Like, he makes jokes the entire way. And I don't know if it's one of those things where the clown, you know, the clown is actually sad and that's why the clown is making jokes. A lot of times that's the situation with comedians. Maybe that's why he became a comedian. I don't know. But I do know he has a podcast with a guy named Chris Pappas called History Hyenas. I looked it up on iTunes and I went ahead and downloaded a few of them. I'm going to listen to a few of them. So you guys will probably hear me talk about that soon. Apparently those are about an hour long each, and you know, we'll see what happens. I'm interested. I'm curious. The guy's funny. He's really funny. He's real quick with Bryan and Brendan Shaub, and the three of them really keep each other on their toes in this episode. They push each other's boundaries a little bit with how quickly they can come up with the next thing. They're all fast. They're all very fast comedians. If you're in the Charlotte area, Bryan Callen's going to be in Charlotte this weekend. I heard him announce that at the Comedy Zone. I've seen 2 comedy shows there at the Comedy Zone. I saw Joey Diaz and Bert Kreischer, and it's a great event. If you are in the area and you want to go, and you've never been there before, it is underneath the Mexican restaurant. Like, when you go in the Mexican restaurant, walk towards the back, there's a stairwell that goes underneath the building, and that's where the club is. And it's actually a decent club. There's really good service. No matter where you sit, you're going to have a good seat. Low ceilings, which is good for comedy. It's very intimate. But both times I went to go, the tickets were reasonable, and I got to see Joey and Bert within, 10 feet of where I was sitting. I was like, holy crap, I'm right here. This is awesome. So yeah, it's a good venue to check out comedy. I first heard about it from Jon Reep. Jon Reep was on Bert's podcast, and he was telling them, you got to come to Charlotte. You got to check out. He mentioned a few places, but Comedy Zone was one of the ones. He was like, you got to check this out. So I noticed that Jon Reep has joined the All Things Comedy Network. He is on promo stuff for their YouTube page. There's one that came up on the feed. It's had something to do with playing a round of golf with another comedian, and I want to watch that because Jon Reep is hilarious. If you guys don't know who Jon Reep is, do you remember the Dodge commercials back in the day with the redneck dude that would lean out the window and go, "Hey man, that thing got a Hemi"? You know, that's Jon Reep. That's just a character he played for a commercial. He also won Last Comic Standing. When he won, a lot of people didn't know that he'd already been doing comedy for 15 years. So he didn't come in there as just the Dodd guy. Like, he was a legit comedian when he walked in the door. If you guys want to listen to a funny podcast, he did a 4.5 hour one with Bert where they got drunk to the point that you can barely understand what they're saying, and it's hilarious. It's a fun hang. They get really silly. I'm a fan of both people, so I enjoyed it. I know people who aren't into that kind of stuff is going to be like, I don't know, this ain't for me. I liked it. I'm in, dude. Bert just announced that his Netflix special is coming out on May 17th. I think it's called Big Boy, or Big Boy Bert, or something like that. Hey Big Boy, or something like that. I don't know. There's a promo video on all social platforms. He's putting it out now. Netflix is putting it out now. May 17th. You're going to hear me talk about it. I'm going to watch it. You guys should watch it. It's going to be hilarious. I saw him working on this on the road, and it's good. It's good stuff. But speaking of MTV and Guy Code, I did happen to have a conversation with Kyle Hardy on. We were messaging each other, and he's like, "Dude, have you heard the Joe Rogan one with Adam Curry?" And I was like, Adam Curry, why is that name familiar? And I was like, hang on, let me check it out. So I just happened to get off work, and I turned it on YouTube, and I've seen Adam Curry, and I was like, he kind of looks like John Bon Jovi now, all those big hair guys 20 years later or whatever. They have all cut their hair short, and they look more. They look older. I mean, let's be honest. You get older, you get 20 years older, you look different. He kind of looked like that, but a bigger man than John Bon Jovi. And I was like, okay, he doesn't really look familiar. So I Googled him. And Google, of course, brings up images of this guy who was a VJ, a video jockey for MTV. And right away when I saw him, I was like, oh, I know this guy. He was like one of the first VJs that would introduce videos on MTV. Google him if you're not sure who I'm talking about. You're going to see images of him. He did Headbangers Ball. He would do a lot of the intro stuff. And this is an interesting podcast between him and Joe Rogan. Joe asks a lot of great questions, and Adam is very forthcoming with everything. He talks about the behind-the-scenes stuff of MTV. Adam is, here in 2020, is best known for being what they call podfather. He's the guy who created podcasting. He's the guy who had the first podcast. He was the first guy that realized that streaming is broadcasting. He's the guy that communicated with Steve Jobs. Oh, this is what we could do with this. And got Steve Jobs even interested in streaming material. Adam Curry is the podfather. All hail Adam Curry. I mean, without him, Joe wouldn't be doing what he's doing. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. Nobody would be doing any of this crap. It all started with him. And he still has a podcast called No Agenda. He lives in Austin, Texas, and he does it out of there. He talks about how the community of people that are fans of the show are not just fans, they're also producers. They donate money, they help out with art, they help out with distribution, they help out with marketing, they help out with everything. And he comments on them and introduces them and talks about them. And I thought, that's a good way to do it. I mean, if you're supposed to build a community, then recognize the people that are part of your community. Why not? But he says he does this whole Game of Thrones thing where he, gives them like titles and stuff and rings and, you're the knight of so-and-so, and you're the queen of so-and-so, and you're the whatever, you can earn your label or whatever by whatever you do. And it's pretty interesting to think about. But, yeah, I mean, if you've got somebody that's fully supportive of you and helping you succeed, why not give them a piece of it in some way? Even if it's just notoriety or a picture or thank you to so-and-so for helping me out with this and blah, 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 Give them a little bit something, just something. Make them feel part of the community. I mean, that's what this is all about, right? Um, he talks a lot about internet trolls. He talks a lot about the development of Google, how they did some nefarious stuff in the past. He talks about how he's trying to be off the internet as much as possible so that he's not being tracked. He's, I guess, concerned about people knowing where he's at or what he's doing. And he's like, try as I may, I just can't get away from it. He's like, there's a lady that does our bookkeeping, and she can look at my receipts and go, oh, I can tell that you eat dinner around this time every day, and you like this kind of food, and you stay in these kinds of hotels, and so I can tell you traveled on this day. And she's like, I can see everything from your receipts. And she's like, you're all worried about your phone. You need to be worried about your phone. And he's like, oh, geez, you kidding me? I can't seem to get away from all this stuff. He mentions the fact that he had come up with a company in the MTV days. He had a little bit of money that he started a business with, and they basically came up with a marketing team to teach people how to market on the internet when the internet was just beginning. And that company sold, and when it sold, he invested a little bit of money, about $50,000, into a company that later became Ask Jeeves. And he said, literally one day, my financial person called me and said, hey, by the way, this company just went public, and you now have $65 million. He was like, excuse me? And so, there's all kind of rules about when you can pull money out and that kind of thing. He goes, but as soon as I could do it, I did it. He said, and I went crazy, man. He said, I bought helicopters and planes. He learned how to fly helicopters. He learned how to fly planes. He bought a castle in Belgium. He bought all kinds of stuff. And, he's like, my daughter was into horses. Of course, we had to have horses. And he talks about living pretty much all over the world. I guess at some point in his life, he was a kid living in the Netherlands. And he talks about a fight that he got into when he was a kid. He has Tourette's. If you watch the YouTube version, in the beginning, I kept watching it, he was blinking like a double blink. And then he would do this head twitch thing. I was like, is he okay? What's going on? But he says he's had Tourette's all his life. And he said, the funny part was, back in the MTV days, if he talked, the longest he had to talk was maybe a minute. And he said, I could control it for a minute. He said, so I would do my best, do my bit, and they would cut camera, and then I would, be twitching and stuff. And he's like, but I've always had it. I've always dealt with it. It's always been there. But he was like, in the MTV days, he talks about how broke he was, and he was like, everybody knew you, but you were just flat broke, like you didn't have anything. He talks about hanging out with Mark Wahlberg back when Mark was part of the Funky Bunch, before he was a world-renowned actor. He talks about, doing these promotional things with them and hanging out in crappy hotels. And, this guy has like been in the zeitgeist of everything that has been part of what is cool in my lifetime. Everything, me and my friends were huddled around a TV all the time when MTV was popular. He talks about at a certain point MTV bought BET because BET apparently had the rights to release Michael Jackson videos first, and MTV didn't want to be second, or they didn't want to have to wait for a grace period in order to show videos, so they bought BET just in order to show the other. It's kind of an interesting behind-the-scenes stuff. But as he's talking, you realize, this guy is really smart. He talks about how he didn't do great in school, but then he talks about, again, learning to fly a helicopter, learning to fly a plane, starting these businesses, and he starts rattling off all these computer things that he knows about RSS feeds and how to, mix in this thing with that thing and get it to work through this filter or that filter. At one point, he says that he owned MTV.com. He said he went to MTV and he said, hey, listen, there's this new internet thing. I think it's going to be huge. I just signed us up for a .com. Do you guys want to do something with it? And they were like, no, we don't care about that. We got this AOL thing. We're good. And he was like, okay. He's one of those early predictors about what's going to be cool. And he owned MTV.com. And he was like, that's back when internet websites really weren't a thing. He's like, but I felt it was going to be. And he said, the weird part was there was no servers I could run off of in our area, so I actually run it off of a server from the Minnesota Golden Gophers college. And he said, I mentioned that on the air one day. I was like, you guys are looking for any more content? Check out MTV.com on the Gophers Network, blah, blah, blah. And he said the school actually reached out to him and said, hey, cease and desist. You can't use our server. If you do, it's going to be $5,000. And he was like, well, I don't have that kind of money. And they were like, well, you can't use our servers if you don't pay us. And he was like, listen, I'm on a TV. How about you guys send me a Gopher shirt and I'll wear it on the air? And they were like, okay. So that was the workaround. So they actually bring up on the YouTube channel video of him doing intros, and he's wearing this Gophers shirt. It's cool. I mean, hey, it's a workaround, right? You're getting the name of the school out there. That's marketing. That's money. I mean, at the time, there was a bunch of eyeballs on the screen. But here's the thing, though. As much as I watched MTV and my friends, it just stayed on that channel for the longest time. As much as we watched it, he said that, their viewership was really low. He said it wasn't until they started doing shows, long-form shows, that viewership went up. And he said that, when they did just videos, it was only like 0.5 to 1% was what they were marking for viewership, which is extremely low. Which explains why they never had money. But I don't know, with me and my friends, it was always like the thing we had on TV. Even if it was just stuff we didn't like to watch, we would just leave it on the channel. It was a whole thing. It was a cultural thing for us. Now, I'm 45, almost 46. I looked him up. He's 55, 10 years older. He was in his early 20s when all this was happening, mid-20s. Yeah. It's pretty incredible life. He talks a lot about living in Austin, talks a lot about the homeless problem, he talks about solutions. This guy's just a really nice guy, I tell you. If you're going to listen to this, I highly recommend watching it because they bring up a lot of videos and a lot of photos of things. And this is a great conversation between the two guys. Both guys have mutual respect for each other for what they've done. I've heard Joe on other podcasts talk about how much he reveres Adam. And once I figured out that was who we were talking about, I was like, oh, I've heard him talk about Adam Curry a lot. And of course, Adam Curry recognizes that Joe right now is at the top of the game when it comes to doing podcasts. I mean, his interview format is unlike anybody else's. 3 hours of a conversation or more. I mean, depending on time restraints and the flow and how it's going. I mean, I told you guys about the last one I listened to with Suzanne Santo and Gary Clark Jr. where they did 4 hours. I mean, I've seen him do 5 with Bert. I mean, who's doing that but Joe? Who's doing it and making it interesting and having people listen and follow and I don't know. I don't know if anybody else is doing it. Excuse me. So anyway, after that, I checked out Bert's YouTube page because I was already on YouTube. I was like, well, let's see what else is on here. Bert's episode 390 is with Taylor Tomlinson. She just has the Netflix special that came out called Quarter Life Crisis. I've talked about Taylor a good bit. She's been on Bert's podcast before. She's been on Dr. Drew's podcast. I've mentioned her before. She's part of a trio group podcast called Self Helpless with Kelsey Cook and Dana Delaney. It's very interesting. The comedy show on Netflix is good. I've actually watched it more than once, and it's funny. There's very few comedy shows I watch more than once. Bert's Secret Time, I've probably watched 5 or 6 times already. Michelle Wolf's special, The Joke Show, I've watched 3 times. Taylor's Quarter Life Crisis, I've seen twice now. And of course, Dave Chappelle's special where he has the joke. You know what I'm talking about. Kicker, yeah, that one. I've watched that one twice. But she's on Bert's podcast. They talk more about the fact that she's now in a relationship with Sam Morril, another comedian who's been on everything. excuse me, all of a sudden my coffee has accumulated in the back of my throat. She talked about how before the Netflix special, she was in a relationship where she was engaged, and talks about growing up in a very Christian home and very religious, strict home, and how she's got 3 other sisters. They're all 2 years apart in age. I mean, she's the oldest. She's, I think, 26, so she's got sisters that are 24, 22, and 20. And apparently her mom died when she was young. Her dad raised them. He's just doing the best he can. And a lot of the stories she has is just hilarious stuff that she saw growing up because of the stress of the situation. They're friendly, Bert and Taylor. They talk a lot about comedy. They talk a lot about friendship. They talk a lot about Sam. They talk a lot about Taylor's past. And Bert reveals some stuff that he's figuring out and learning. And that's what we're all doing. We're all figuring this out together, right? I think that's one of the appeals of podcasts, is that we can share this kind of stuff with each other. We can talk about what we're going through, and we can be like, hey, listen, you're not alone. I'm going through this too. I mentioned that on the last podcast. The more you talk about things, and the more you're vulnerable about things, the more your community can grow, because you're going to realize that you're not by yourself. And someone around you is going to be able to help you, or at least, make you feel like you're not alone. And listen, that's important. We all need that. So the Tulsi Gabbard has a podcast. I mentioned that before. I listened to her second and third episode. The second episode was called How Levy McKay Won Her Battle with Opioids. Basically, she got hooked on opioids and was starting to learn to get off the opioids because of her dad being a lawyer and her mom being a healthcare professional. She was told her whole life that marijuana was awful, it was evil, and then she started using cannabis to treat her illness, and she didn't need opioids anymore. The opioids almost killed her. She talks about how that almost killed her. But the cannabis helped her get off of it. She went into marketing. She started working for Morgan Chase. She was very good at her job. She continued to move up. And she's got a very interesting story about how cannabis basically saved her life. And now there is a market for this, and she's already on the inside of knowing what needs to be done to look out for people's health and security, and also how it's a financial windfall for a lot of people. I keep hearing people talk about the economy being this bear market where it keeps growing and growing and growing, and how it is designed to grow and crash at certain points. And I've heard the comment more than once lately how the legalization of marijuana has actually curtailed the drop in the market, because things are moving through and making so much money that it just keeps supporting this thing that's growing. And it's very interesting to hear. The next episode is Tulsi and Dave Navaro speak truth to power. So this week, a lot of things have happened with the Democratic National Committee and the race to be the Democratic primary. Here in South Carolina, I think Joe Biden won the state. Of course, I've talked about the fact that I voted for Tulsi. Mainstream media still doesn't want to even recognize that she's in the race. They keep talking about how Elizabeth Warren dropped out. Like, oh no, she was the only woman left. No, that's not correct. They actually called Elizabeth Warren a woman of color. How is this old white lady a woman of color? Because she has less than 1% of Native American in her blood? I haven't done the 23andMe, but I'm guaranteeing I probably have more Native American in me than she does. And I've never once used it to better my life. I've never gone to a college and said, I need a free ride because I'm a Native American, which she did. I never ran for a public office because I'm a Native American and won, because she did. I never lived a lie to help advance my life and take advantage of people less fortunate than me, which she did. And yet she's running for president, and now she's dropped out, and somehow CNN's calling her a woman of color. Really? Interesting. Tulsi Gabbard's from Hawaii. She's Samoan and Asian and, Polynesian mix and all this stuff, and she's not a woman of color? She's not the woman running for president? I don't know how the mainstream media can just glaze over the fact that she's still running, other than the fact that she dropped out of the DNC last election to support Bernie because she's like, I didn't want to serve on the DNC and have a vested interest in a candidate because that would be illegal. That would be immoral. And she's like, but because I did that, I had people come to me and say, well, your political career is over. Really? Because she wasn't willing to play ball with the people who want to do it illegally. She didn't want to be the old guy sports analogy of the good old boys club. This is a great podcast because Dave, it sounds like he's somewhere else and they've somehow either Skyped it or tagged him into a mixer board or whatever. He asks a lot of questions and allows her to talk, and this is an interview, and it's done really well. I highly recommend checking it out. Dave Navaro, you guys may know, was the lead singer of Jane's Addiction, and then at a certain point he joined Red Hot Chili Peppers. I didn't even know he was with Red Hot Chili Peppers. I just found that out on Google. But anyway, they talk a lot about Hillary Clinton basically trying to say that she thinks that Tulsi's a Russian asset. There's a lawsuit over that because that's called slander. You're not legally allowed to deface someone like that. Totally untrue. One of those two people serves this country currently in the military. One of those two people. And it's not Hillary. They talk about the DNC. They talk about baseless smears. They talk about foreign campaign policy. They talk about election security. This is a good interview with a presidential candidate who's still in it. Bloomberg's dropped out. Buttigieg's dropped out. Some girl named Kate dropped out. I don't know who Kate was. Elizabeth Warren dropped out. Tulsi's still in it. Because she's still not receiving money from the DNC. She's self-funded by people donating money. If you guys want to check out anything more on her, I highly recommend checking out her podcast. But if that's not good enough, go to her website, Tulsi Gabbard 2020. Do your own research. I'm just saying. You don't have to pick the lesser of two evils. So let's talk a little bit about stuff I've watched, because I know I've talked about YouTube, but here's another YouTube thing I watched. There's a guy on YouTube called The Tim Tracker. And my wife in the beginning kept wanting to call him Tracker Tim or something like that. But anyway, The Tim Tracker. It's this guy and his wife, and they are Disney super fans. Not just Disney, but anything Orlando. They go to Busch Gardens. They go to Universal Studios. They go to different things around the area, SeaWorld and stuff like that. And they basically show you what you could expect, and they're pretty honest about what they see and what they're experiencing and whether something's good or not. Anyway, there's a new ride that's opening up at Disney Hollywood Studios called Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railroad, and they were invited for like a media day to go and be a part of it. They were allowed to film it, so they did. He's got a really good camera, and he films the thing. He rides it more than once and films it from one perspective one time and from another perspective another time. And he basically shows you what the ride is about, and it's really cool. There's this new thing that Disney's doing, this digital mapping animation, where there's animatronics, but there's also an overlay of animation on it. Really cool looking. You gotta go on YouTube and check it out. It's fascinating. But yeah, my wife is a super fan of the Tim Tracker, so anytime that there's a new video, we're watching it usually on the couch. Then, of course, on Disney Plus, I am starting to watch the cartoon series Star Wars Clone Wars. I've talked about Rebels before and how Rebels was really, really, really good. Clone Wars right now is just kind of hard to get going. I'm about 12 episodes into the first season. It's okay. It hasn't really grabbed me yet. But, to be honest, Rebels didn't really grab me until about 5 or 6 episodes in. But they're short episodes. They're like 25 minutes or so. Because they were made for TV with commercials, and there's no commercials, obviously, on Disney+. So you can go through them pretty quickly. Pretty easy to watch. But yeah. And that's it. There is a huge UFC fight this weekend. Stylebender versus Romero. Oh my goodness, it looks exciting. Can't wait to watch. But again, thank you to Josh Treadaway for the little fire stick deal. I'll probably be taking that with me. We're going out of town to visit my wife's family for a family reunion. I don't know if anybody else is going to be into watching this, but I'm into it. It's going to be wicked cool. So yeah, that's it. Thank you to everybody who's been a part of this. I do have t-shirts ordered. They have sent me a confirmation. I don't really know what to say yet, what I'm allowed to say yet. I got to wait to see what they look like when they show up. But basically, I ordered 100 t-shirts. So everybody who wanted a t-shirt during the first run, I've got some for this time. And I've decided that if you're on the podcast, I'm just going to give you a shirt. If you've ever been on the podcast, you're getting one. To anybody else, though, I'm going to be selling them because I do need to make some money back. This is a very expensive endeavor that I've done. But anyway, I figure it's just a chance to get some marketing out there, and they're not going to be crazy expensive. So if you're interested, let me know, and we'll hook something up. Okay. At the end of the day, though, I just want to kind of get people to be part of the community, and we'll go from there. My computer is giving me a weird notice right now. Such a weird time to do that. I'm wearing my lucky shirt, so wish me luck. Y'all take care now. Thanks for listening, and as always, cue the cow. Ooh, baby.